The divorce between Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck appeared to be simple. They co-parent, he drank, and she went. A simple tale. 7 years later, however, Affleck is unable to remain silent. He made a shocking disclosure to Hollywood in 2025. Alcohol and extramarital affairs were not the true cause of their marriage's dissolution. The entire time, Garner was aware of this secret. She remained mute to protect him. What Affleck ultimately disclosed clarifies why she actually filed for divorce and why she continues to support him. You won't believe the truth. On August 15, 1972, Ben Affleck was born at Alta Bates Summit Medical Center in Berkeley, California. Benjamin Gaza Affleck Bolt was his complete name. His mother, Chris Ann Bolt, was a Harvard graduate and teacher, while his father, Timothy Byers Affleck, pursued acting and writing careers. But the bills weren't paid by dreams. In order to relocate to Falmouth, Massachusetts, the family packed up and left when Ben was just 3 months old. Casey, Ben's younger brother, was born in that same village in 1975. The fragrance of books and the sound of plays being read aloud were constants in the Affleck home. At night, Chris used to quote Shakespeare. There was drinking, but Tim also brought theater scripts home. At Harvard, Tim alternated between carpentry and custodial labor since he was unable to maintain a consistent employment. In an attempt to find anything that stuck, they continued to travel around towns and apartments. Despite all of the unpredictability, the creative spark remained alive. When Ben was little, he would to watch Boston actors practice in silence backstage. That curiosity persisted. At the age of 11, Ben's parents formally announced their separation in 1983. The alcohol had worn off, and Chris had been putting things off for too long. Ben and Casey moved into a little Cambridge apartment with her. The salary of her teacher was hardly enough. Food stamps, secondhand clothing, and limited space were all present. However, she never gave up on the arts. Even though it seemed like their world was collapsing, she encouraged Ben to continue performing. At the age of 7, Ben had his first major opportunity. He appeared on the PBS series The Voyage of the Mimi in 1984. It wasn't merely a game. Genuine scientists, genuine expeditions, and a young actor attempting to recall complex conversation about sonar and whales were all featured. There was more than one town where that show aired. Everywhere, it was broadcast. Children from across the nation watched Ben on television. His parents' divorce changed his life in the same year the show debuted. His weekends were divided between a modest home where every dollar mattered and a messy apartment full of rejected scripts. 2 years later, at the age of 14, Ben starred in the ABC special Wanted, The Perfect Guy. It addressed identity and peer pressure, subjects that Ben knew more about than others. He had already learned to change his mask depending on who was observing and was accustomed to entering rooms full of strangers. That part demonstrated that he was more than just a line memorizer. They were palpable to him. Things became more difficult at home around that time. Tim relocated to Los Angeles in order to pursue his dream of becoming a screenwriter. Chris tried homeschooling Ben in an attempt to assist him cope with the mounting demands of a competitive educational system and acting roles. He was more adaptable, but he also felt alone. Distinct. Acting evolved beyond a pastime. It became a means of continuing. Ben arrived on The Flash's set in 1989. Despite having action sequences, stunts, and genuine crews, it wasn't a huge hit. Even though he was only 17, he already had more life experience than some of the adults in his room. In the same year, he played a younger version of Kevin Costner's character in the film Field of Dreams. He tried to imitate every move as closely as possible to Costner's. Even though there weren't many flashback moments, they nevertheless required a lot of discipline and long days. At Cambridge Ring and Latin School in 1984, Ben first got to know Matt Damon. They were both 12 years old. Drama class was a favorite of both. They connected through improvisation, regional vernacular, and the notion that they might be able to pull this off together. They wrote sketches. Music, they looked at scenes. They eventually relocated to Los Angeles, where they could not afford food. Shared rooms, ramen noodles, and a great deal of rejection. They went through more than 100 small role auditions. The majority of occupations were unpaid. But each no encouraged them to create their own yes. In 1991, Ben left the University of Vermont after only one semester. He wished to take action. There was nothing else that fit. Fuel was created by the battle. He and Matt were aware that they had something to contribute, and that contribution ultimately evolved into Good Will Hunting. Ben portrayed a quarterback named Chris Ree in School Ties in 1992, though, before that script altered their lives. The part has a lot of tension. He had to yell nasty things at a Jewish classmate. It was not mere theater. Ben drew on his childhood experiences in Cambridge. The unseen boundaries between neighborhoods and the way wealthy children denigrated others. A painful lesson was learned somewhere during that early rise. A tabloid published a report about Ben having an affair with a 15-year-old co-star during the Meanies' journey. He was 12 years old. The damage was done even though he denied it. He experienced for the first time what it was like to be somewhat renowned. That you might be followed for years by the shadows that others would fabricate legends about. Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were aspiring actors in 1992, living in a small Los Angeles basement and trying to make ends meet. They began writing Good Will Hunting's first 40 pages without any funding or support, just a narrative influenced by their own experiences. What started off as a one-act play gradually grew into a much larger production. Over the course of 3 arduous years, they repeatedly revised the script, honing each scene and delving deeper into the characters' emotional depth. They weren't by themselves. Terrence Malick intervened and informed them that if Will didn't pursue Skylar at the conclusion, the narrative would feel more compelling. That thought changed everything. The film's emotional core started to take shape around themes of choice, grief, and remaining loyal to oneself. Next up was William Goldman. He told them that the relationship between Will and his therapist Sean McGuire was at the center of the film after cutting out 60 pages of action filler. That emphasis altered the mood. Rob Reiner added his voice as well, advocating for greater clarity in the emotional twists. These behind-the-scenes advisors turned an unpolished manuscript into something sincere. They were given 6 months to find another company if they wanted complete control, but Castle Rock consented when it came time to sell the script in 1994. It almost crumbled. The transaction nearly fell through until Kevin Smith gave it to Miramax. The film was rescued by that move. When Gus Vance took over as director in 1997, the casting process started. Chucky Sullivan was a difficult role for Affleck to land. In order to master the dialect, he spent weeks honing his voice and listening to South Boston residents. He did not want to come across like a tourist. He wanted to sound as if he had spent his entire life there. The camaraderie between Damon and Affleck overcame the studio's reservations about choosing 2 unknowns as protagonists. The movie began to take shape once Robin Williams, Minnie Driver, and Stellan Skarsgård joined the cast. The most impactful sequence was added late in the production. Chucky informs Will that the 10 seconds he spends approaching his door and hoping Will is gone are the highlight of his day. The entire scene wasn't pre-written. On a wet night, they shot it. There were 12 takes. Improvising, Affleck was expressing all of his fears of being trapped in one spot and never leaving. He wrote the words as well as the script. On the set, Damon sobbed. No van stopped him. No one on the crew spoke. Everyone sensed it. The entire essence of the film was encapsulated in that one monologue, and it remained. The 70th Academy Awards then took place in March 1998. Best Original Script went to Good Will Hunting. Affleck and Damon approached. There were just 2 children who used to write in a basement. They expressed gratitude to their mothers for supporting their delusional dreams. It was a memorable speech. Showing off wasn't the point. The trip was the main focus. The entire room sensed it. Few people were aware that they had declined a $1 million advance in order to maintain creative control prior to all of this. It was a risky move. Their lives might have been different with the money, but they stuck to the plan. They had already made $600,000 on the sale, but not much remained after agent cuts and taxes. They did it quickly. a Jeep, a nightclub close to the Hollywood Bowl. They were broke once more 6 months later. However, Good Will Hunting made $225 million globally when movie eventually opened in theaters. They became legendary for that one gamble. Affleck's career progressed quickly after that. He portrayed AJ, a roughneck space traveler, in Armageddon later in 1998. The filming was harsh. Zero-gravity simulators for 16-hour days. He dangled for 45 minutes during one rehearsal due to a malfunctioning harness, his body hurting and perspiring through the wires. His rhythm began to incorporate that kind of physical strain. He endured the blows and persisted. He and Gwyneth Paltrow were filming Bounce by 2000. Though the emotion also oozed off-screen, they portrayed lovers who were plagued by loss. They had been dating intermittently, but their popularity began to separate them. The media glare became overwhelming after Paltrow won the Oscar for Shakespeare in Love. According to friends, Affleck appeared, music, aloof. He was increasing his intake. It was sliding, despite his best efforts to maintain order. The film benefited from their genuine connection, but their relationship broke down in private. In 1999, it was finished. Pearl Harbor followed in 2001. Rafe McCauley, a W-toy pilot, was portrayed by Affleck. The production was enormous. During a stunt, one of the more than 20 refurbished warplanes crashed while flying low over Hawaiian waters. Filming was halted for 2 days when 3 crew members were hurt. Safety became the main priority. The studio made progress. The romantic triangle drama and aerial dogfights were incorporated into an epic wartime tale. Behind the scenes, however, there was actual strain. He made another attempt in 2003 with the sci-fi thriller Paycheck. It was a failure. Out of 153 reviews, it received a mere 27% on Rotten Tomatoes. The narrative failed. It received negative reviews. It made him doubt himself. He had rejected The Matrix years before. He wanted to avoid doing too many sci-fi roles. He described that as his worst regret of 2010. After The Paycheck fell apart, it was particularly painful to watch The Matrix become a worldwide sensation. Affleck's drinking had already begun to worsen back in 1999 while he was working on Dogma. He played a fallen angel named Bartleby. But he was smuggling flasks behind the camera. Pittsburgh shoots night and long. The pressure was growing along with the fame. In 2001, he entered rehab. 40 days. There was booze in his family's past. He didn't conceal it. For years to come, that early admission of addiction would be a part of his story. Directing wasn't easy for Ben Affleck. In 2007, his debut feature film as a director, Gone Baby Gone, took to the streets of Boston. It was not a cozy studio. In just 10 days, he and his crew investigated around 85 actual places throughout the city. Sets were not built by them. Where the tale was set, they shot. The Quincy Quarries, a home on Pond Street in Dorchester, Murphy's Law Bar on Summer Street. Style for style's sake was not the point of this. The truth was at issue. Leaning toward natural lighting, he put his own brother Casey Affleck in the starring role and allowed Boston's unadulterated texture speak for itself. Despite just costing a few $1 million, the picture made $34.6 million globally. The conclusion was not consoling. Long after the credits rolled, people were still debating what was right and wrong. It wasn't only a strong start. It served as a warning. Affleck was being serious. Every frame carried that intensity. Affleck also didn't fabricate the police version of events. He brought in actual Boston police officers, particularly those who understood the sorrow of child abduction cases. From how they broke down detainees to the design of interrogation facilities, he questioned them on everything. That focus was evident in each scene. You can feel it in your bones when a kid disappears in the film. The little performers, however, were never overworked. To help them navigate it securely, Affleck employed qualified coaches. Control, not chaos, was the source of realism. The squad cars were real, too. The outcome lacked shine. There was another thing. The film gained a reputation for its raw honesty rather than its polished storytelling because it felt authentic. Affleck brought the town back by 2010, telling a robbery tale enmeshed in history, loyalty, and desperation this time. Despite costing $37 million to produce, it brought in $154 million globally. Rare for a slow-burning crime movie, that was a 125% return. It wasn't luck, though. His request to shoot in real Charlestown vaults was denied by the FBI. As a result, the crew reconstructed them on soundstages. And the actors weren't speculating. They learned how actual bank robbers moved, spoke, and planned by sitting with them. Shooting one of the largest scenes in Fenway Park took 10 days. Effects were not the source of the strain. It was the ticking of the clock. It was all captured on camera in real time. It became apparent. But when Affleck and his cinematographer got into a fight, the town almost fell apart. They couldn't agree on the city's appearance. One desired the glow of Hollywood. Affleck fired Boston because he wanted his bruises to be visible. Mid-production. That was dangerous. Robert Elwit, a seasoned collaborator who had made a name for himself filming There Will Be Blood, was called in instead. Elwit's use of melancholy neon and shadow to cover the screen contributed to the movie's 94% Rotten Tomatoes rating. People were aware. Although critics were aware of the story's strength, the visuals made it stand out. Affleck went beyond lighting. He also seized control of the sound. He contributed $2 million of his personal funds to the post-production process. His intention was for the gunfire to reverberate as it would in actual Boston robberies. They thus went to nearby ranges, fired live rounds, and created each sound from the ground up. It was a success. The film was not nominated for an Oscar for Best Sound Editing. They earned it. Every little thing was planned. Affleck was not producing action movies. You were struck down by the memories he was creating. It wasn't merely an emotional change when he donned the cape in Batman vs. Superman in 2016. It was bodily. He ate 3,000 calories a day, lifted like a machine, and grew to 215 pounds. He spent 5 months doing rigorous cardio and hard deadlifts with his trainer. He had Batman's appearance. Affleck was conflicted, though. He had a heated argument with director Zack Snyder on the character's essence. Snyder envisioned a deadly, dark Batman. He was viewed as a line-holding hero by Affleck. They fought a lot. The film was infused with the struggle. The somber tone was embraced by certain fans. Others turned it down. Affleck was caught between the legend and the vision. Justice League followed. What ought to have been a victory turned intolerable. Snyder resigned after his daughter passed away tragically. Whedon took his place. The stress of his divorce from Jennifer Garner was already breaking Affleck. Now, the movie also started to fall apart. He hardly slept as he spent 18 hours straight filming scenes. The tone kept changing, he was physically exhausted, and he was emotionally hollow. What began as a grim epic by Snyder became clumsy and out of place. Affleck stated as much. It was among his most depressing periods. When he quit directing The Batman in 2017, that storyline reached a climax. He claimed in public that it was personal. It was survival on a personal level. He was being fed by the script's darkness. He battled despair and drinking before going to rehab. The script for Batman was making things worse. He was unable to continue living in that headspace. He released it. Matt Reeves joined Warner Brothers. The course altered. Affleck acknowledged that leaving the Batcave had likely saved his life and that his time there was over. However, the sound continued to follow him long after he left. An audio tape from a 2010 GMA interview that had been forgotten abruptly surfaced in 2021. In it, Affleck was shouting at a producer about the poor quality of the sound. It was genuine, unfiltered, and furious. Some saw it as a rare glimpse of the pressure he endured on a daily basis, while the media misrepresented it as just another Affleck meltdown. None of the storylines, labels, or expectations originated with him. They were the result of those who desired an unrealized version of himself. The leak did not ruin him. It demonstrated his flaws, exhaustion, and humanity. By 2023, the Flash Affleck's last curtain as Batman arrived. He was only on set for 10 days, but the remuneration didn't reflect that. For just 10 days, he received $25 million. That figure summed it up. Although it is profitable, the world of superheroes is rarely tranquil. Affleck finished. The outfit was removed. It came with a chapter that put him to the test on all fronts. Soul, body, mind. The multiverse made an appearance. A door closed, Affleck noticed. He didn't leave feeling upset. Knowing that he gave it his all and got lost in the process, he turned to leave. On the set of Pearl Harbor in 2000, Ben Affleck first got to know Jennifer Garner. She had a little part as a nurse, while he was portraying a pilot in World War II. They took some time to fall in love. Both were having affairs. Things changed, however, on the set of Daredevil 3 years later. Since they were portrayed as romantic interests, their bond has also begun to deepen off-screen. He was tall, black, and attractive, Garner subsequently claimed. At a Boston Celtics game in 2003, they went on their first official date. Although it wasn't glitzy, it was them. Both came from towns with a working class. Cambridge native Affleck and Charleston, West Virginia native Garner. They had little interest in Hollywood glitz. All they desired was something tangible. They escaped to Turks and Caicos on June 29, 2005. Just 30 individuals attended the intimate, covert wedding. However, they used hotel keycards because Affleck had forgotten the wedding bands. It was unimportant. They preferred it to be quiet and intimate. Violet, their daughter, was born on December 1, 2005, 6 months later. Affleck chose to take time off for paternity. He stayed at home and attempted to be a hands-on father by watching YouTube videos about diapers. While filming Alias, Garner was balancing the needs of a baby. They supported one another, took turns, and made an effort to avoid the spotlight. But things began to tremble in 2007. Christine Yuzunian, the nanny, was featured in a tabloid. She said that she and Affleck had a covert relationship. She said that private moments at Hotel Bear were among the music, text messages, and hotel trips. Garner apparently learned about it while on vacation in the Bahamas. The tale went viral. After denying everything, Affleck's team reached a secret settlement of $500,000. They then tried to shield the children from the loudness, increase security, and close down privacy. Affleck was in charge of the town by 2009. Despite working in Los Angeles, he brought a sense of home to the set. He brought in extras that brought back memories of his former Boston neighborhood. Bringing the children to the set, he would transform it into a playground. He still found time for his family while conducting FBI investigation and speaking with actual bank thieves. Garner became pregnant once more, and they were making every effort to make things work. The flaws, however, became too deep to conceal in 2015. At the time of filming Batman v Superman, Affleck was under the influence of alcohol. He acknowledged drinking a bottle of scotch per night in an interview from 2018. He would try to ignore the ache by sitting by himself. They announced their separation to the world on June 30, 2015, even though their relationship had begun to deteriorate in 2013. Garner began going to Al-Anon meetings. She wished to know what he was experiencing. Despite her weariness and pain, she continued to pursue him. They announced it was over to People magazine that same year. They had attempted to maintain their composure for the children and sought counseling, but to no avail. Affleck said in 2021 that his addiction had destroyed any possibility of their reunion. He felt embarrassed. Although they both did, they didn't want the children to grow up in a tense household. In a conversation with Howard Stern in 2016, Affleck revealed even more personal details. He said that the demands of being a father had ensnared him. To escape the stress of family life and bedtime stories, he drank alcohol. It was honest, yet it was difficult to hear. On multiple occasions, Garner had taken him to rehab. She supported him even when she was worn out. Their family intervened. They still thought he may survive. The divorce was completed on October 28, 2018. It had taken 2 years. Affleck consented to make a monthly child support payment of $100,000. Violet, Serafina, and Samuel were granted joint custody. It was reciprocal, he later claimed. They didn't want to raise their children in a house where love had devolved into icy quiet. Rather, they opted for peace. The media remained silent despite their widespread presence. For the children, they continued to show up. When Affleck was filming The Way Back in 2019, he relapsed. On the set, he went dark. Garner filled in once more. She got him through another spell in treatment. When it came to the kids, they never ceased to work together. They continued co-parenting while being trailed by cameras to recovery facilities or school drop-offs. Affleck stated to GQ in March 2025 that scandal had nothing to do with his split from Jennifer Lopez. On August 20, 2024, she filed for divorce. In January 2025, they finalized their separation, which had begun months earlier on April 26. He said that they just drifted apart. The media's pressure was not helpful. Protecting their tail simply made it more difficult. In the same year, he said that no deep secrets were revealed in the HBO program. It simply illustrated what actual couples experience. When he returned to Jimmy Kimmel Live later in 2025, he discussed Garner once again. She was wonderful, he said. He said that she had supported him continuously since helping him get sober in 2018. Samuel was 13, Serafina was 16, and Violet was already 19. They'd been co-parenting so well since 2020 that they'd even gone together for Thanksgiving. They were seen working side by side at a homeless shelter and at a Red Sox game in October. Co-parenting with her is the highlight of Affleck's life, he claimed. Together, Affleck and Lopez attended the October 2025 New York premiere of Kiss of the Spider-Woman, a musical version in which Lopez starred. And Affleck's business had made. After Music split, it was their first public appearance. Together, they strolled the carpet. Although embarrassing, it was genuine. She has always been a light in his life, he said, praising her optimism. He continued after that. He referred to Garner as his true anchor since they shared something that went beyond romanticism rather than because they were together. Already, Affleck's career was improving. Artist Equity was founded in 2022 by him and Matt Damon. Their debut movie, Air, was released in 2023 and made $16 on a budget of $90 million. The film was directed by Affleck. He claimed that being sober since 2018 helped him maintain concentration. Music, he aspired to narrate authentic stories once more with genuine authority. He told Elle in 2025 that being truthful with Garner and himself had led to opportunities he never would have imagined. Affleck reflected in a Vanity Fair profile that same year. He claimed that most of what people thought regarding their breakup was untrue. He had been slow, as had Garner. They altered. They developed in distinct ways. She did, however, assist him in becoming the father he had always desired. I would rather do family therapy than any major role, he stated. Not the life they had created, the children they had nurtured, or the lessons they had learned together, he lamented how the world watched them go.